Morning, folks. This is RotorStorm331, back to doing some more streaming. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving day. I realized I left my game audio on while I was doing my guides, so I'll have to redo all the guides again. So therefore, this is more of a take two for all the characters I did the other night, which is Sean, Nina, and Spar in that specific order. Anyway, we're going to be covering Sean first, aka our Undead Slayer, and we're going to be covering his strengths, weaknesses, field and combat abilities, spells, in-game gear to bring with them if you do decide to bring him on to the final dungeons and final boss, and as well as his shaman forms and abilities. So anyway, let's get started. So Sean is kind of a below average fighter for the most part. As you can definitely tell, most of his stats aren't very high in some sense. His only real high stat is his luck, which is at the moment 217. And, well, technically it would be 211 due to his ultimate weapon causing him to get +5 on his stats for the most part. And along with that luck, he also has decent strength and stamina, which is his other two good stats. Of course, he has the second worst agility in the entire game, along with Rand, so he's not going to be able to get as much attacks in as much as possible. Now, given his accessibility to spells and whatnot, Sean would be easily considered to be very low in general in usage, because he doesn't hit as hard as some of the other characters, and he does have okay defenses, but his stamina is not very particularly high in general, but it's higher than cats, stems, and bows, that's for sure. But anyway, once you discover that some of his rapiers have holy element, however, that quickly changes Sean's stocks, because the moment you get him and after you complete the events at Summerford, Sean will get more usage from Mumara, Shupki, and Necromancer for bosses, and for dungeons, going through High Fort, Bando, probably Everai, and even Infinity. There's going to be a ton of undead monsters or spirit enemies you'll run across that are only susceptible to holy element. I should also probably point out that spirit monsters are take less physical damage when getting attacked, so having a holy weapon, someone on your team with a holy weapon is going to be very beneficial taking out those kind of monsters, because those things are very durable, even though they don't have very high HP. But still, holy weapons make Sean a huge sleeper hit by the most part. So he goes from being a complete joke to actually very useful for those areas where undead monsters and spirit monsters tend to thrive in general. So in other words, Sean gets a lot more usage than you would think that he would probably not get. Not to mention, two of his spells will get to see more mileage once they become available, and we'll cover that eventually. So now that we covered Sean overall, we're going to go ahead and check out his field and combat abilities. So his field ability is Giant Frog, which allows him to transform into a Giant Frog and transport the party. So when he moves forward, he'll move 2 spaces each time. So basically, you're moving like 2 steps ahead each time he leaps. But that's not the only big thing. You can also jump across areas you cannot normally reach with this ability. So he can easily get up to places that are not very high, but at the same time can be leaped over. But the real use for this ability is to swim around the waters. You can even press A to have him croak. This ability is pretty much exclusive to the Creeping Clan, or as a consequence of being cursed by Nuifa, unfortunately. But as you can definitely tell here, you can jump across all these places. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that you will be thrown into battle, and this is pretty good because we can now cover Sean's combat ability. So Sean has Jab. It's not a very high damaging attack, but allows him to attack every enemy on screen. I would say this is an okay combat ability, but not really useful, since it doesn't really allow him to deal full damage, given the fact that the damage will be split between all the enemies. So in other words, Jab's pretty good for dealing with the more weaker enemies that Sean can easily destroy, just not very strong monsters. So anyway, that covers Sean's field and combat abilities. So before we go into go ahead and showcase his fusions, I'll go over his spells real quick. So anyway, Sean learns a total of these spells right here. I'm not going to mention the level, but the first set of spells that he does get are all acquired up to from level 12 to 20, and done by twos. Angel, Death, and Renew require Sean to be at around the level 30s to get these spells. So it's definitely well worth the effort to continue building up Sean, just to get access to those last three. So anyway, Agile Up is the first spell that he gets access to. Regardless, it's bugged in the SNES version, but I think they fixed it in the Game Boy Advance version, but I'm not positive. So if anyone does know, leave a comment on the comment section of my YouTube channel. Hush, of course, is another debuff ability that Shaw gets access to, but regardless, it's not a very reliable spell because even though it does have a chance of sealing enemy spells, debuffs in this game don't really stick very long. Sometimes they'll wear off the moment you cast on them and go into the next round of combat, or sometimes they'll just wear off after 2 or 5 turns or somewhere around the line. But this does have a few usages, but not a whole lot. Warp, of course, is one of Sean's spells that allows him to teleport himself and his allies to any of the towns that you visited. Of course, we can't showcase the list here, but it's pretty much any town that's not Evi or Bando. Even though those are probably towns and houses, you can't go to those. You can't warp to dungeons, unfortunately. But overall, this is a very good way to get to places where you do need to be and not having to make the long walkabout from walking and whatnot. Unless you're using Rand's roll ability, that is. Power Down is another debuff that he gets. This lowers the enemy's strength stat for the rest of the battle. This does have a few usages, but not a whole lot since debuffs tend to get shrugged off by enemies for the most part. Cold is one of Sean's few offensive spells that he gets. This allows him to deal minor ice damage to single targets for either up to 30 or 35 so damage. This will deal less damage when going up against enemies that are strong against ice, and it'll also deal more damage against enemies that are weak against ice. Idle is another debuff ability. It's actually somewhat useful if you're going up against atomic sludges on Giant Isle. This can be used to immobilize the target, seal their movements, as this game calls it. But this might not always stick after applying it, so be forewarned when using it. Angel, of course, is one of the few offensive spells that Sean gets. This enables him to instantly kill undead enemies if it succeeds in connecting. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that the spell will not work against spirit enemies. So any undead enemy that's a skeleton, a charm, or a zombie, or anything that's considered undead could be hit with this ability and destroy them instantly. But any enemies that are spirit-based monsters, they cannot be harmed with this move. So this serves as an instant death attack for any undead enemies you come across. Death is probably Sean's most best offensive spell. This allows you to basically defeat any living enemy that you come across. If this spell connects, they will lose all their HP and they'll be defeated. This allows Sean to easily defeat some monsters that would not normally be possible for him otherwise. One thing to keep in mind about the death spell is that this will not work against non-living enemies like machines or organic creatures like golems or something like that. So and this will probably not work against undead enemies or spirit enemies, so keep that in mind. Renew is Sean's last spell that he learns. This is his only healing spell that he gets access to, and this allows him to revive at a 70% chance of reviving an ally. He can try to revive one character for 1 HP. This is not a very reliable spell in this game, unfortunately, and I would strongly recommend using life pills instead. Alright, that covers Sean's spells, so let's go ahead and go over to to the fusion areas so we can go over Sean's fusions. Sean requires Seni to fuse, so he won't be able to fuse with any of the shamans for quite a while. So anyway, I do remember fusing Sesso with Seni, so let's see if that works. But technically, you only need Seni in order to fuse with Sean and get his form. But I think Sesso, Sana, and Spoo work with him as well. The only difference is it just overall affects his stats for the most part. So this is a combination with Sesso and Seni. Now, Seni doesn't really offer any bonuses outside of AP gain. As you can definitely tell, his offense and defense went up in general. And of course, his wisdom also went up a little bit higher. But anyway, you just only need Seni, but fusing him with Senna, Sesso, and Spoo will allow you to basically give you a more radically different form. 1 second. My apologies. Okay. But anyway, you can fuse Senna, Spoo, and Sesso with Seni for Sean to give him a lot more better stats than what he has right now. So basically, this is what he gets without any of those fusions outside Seni. Of course, Sean does face stiff competition if you do decide to use Bow more often. And that's mostly due to the fact that his fusion form requires Holy and Devil Shamans to be able to get his transformation. So anyway, we're going to go, one thing to keep in mind is that even in Shaman form, Sean can still transform into his giant frog form, which is nice to know. Okay, we need to get into battle so we can showcase Sean's combat ability in his Shaman form. So he gets access to Chop. Like Cat's Keep, this will allow him to charge up for 2 turns, and then on the next turn, after he charges up, he'll do an attack that cuts the landscape and damages all enemies for 999 damage. So we're going to see what Chop gets used for. Now, keep in mind this will not work against all enemies. It does destroy most of them, but some enemies will be able to resist Chop, so they won't go down normally. So that's a friendly reminder to be forewarned when using this ability. Anyway, so let's go over Sean's final gear for endgame if you do decide to bring him against Death even and go through Infinity. Which, by the way, he'll do exceptionally well against large amount of the enemies in that dungeon in general. So anyway, Sean's best weapon in the game is No Twin Rapier. This is also a holy based elemental weapon, so this gives Sean very effective high damage against undead and spirit enemies. So this makes Sean actually a well worth party member to bring for the trip to both the first and second half of Infinity, pretty much. The problem is, though, it also requires you to get this as a rare item drop from fighting Night Riders. Who, by the way, also drops the best shield for Sean to use, which is Medusa's shield. So basically, that enemy has 2 big, huge props for Sean because he can get his ultimate weapon and best shield from there. But if you don't want to take a chance with the Night Riders on Night Rider Island, you can also sell for the Holy Rapier. That can be acquired earlier on when you start making your descent into Death Even's lair. And this also has holy base damage, but unlike No Twin Rapier, as you see here, this will not give him 5+ stats. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Ryu can also equip No Twin Rapier. So if you did somehow get 2 of those, you can give Ryu 1 so that he can use that against any undead enemies and get 5+ on his stats. For best armor, Sean has a few options. I always give him the life armor, though if you want, you can definitely give him hero armor, even though that lowers his defense a little bit, not as high as the life armor, but it does give him a little bit more agility and offense. So if you're If you're more concerned about Sean's agility and offense, this would be a lot more better option than Life Armor. But technically, Life Armor is pretty much only a one-of-a-kind armor and faces stiff competition because you give that to Sten and Ryu as well. But Hero Armor is also another good option. That's actually his third best armor. If you want, you can also consider trying to win Sacred SHs. And those are his second best armor in the entire game. Not to mention that it gives him a chance to resist elemental damage from spells. The Medusa Shield can be easily won from Knight Riders, in addition to trying to win them from Knight Riders in general. But you can also purchase these for a very steep amount from a Marinon between Kotlin and Bando. So be sure to, regardless of which way, you definitely want him to equip with Medusa Shield. Now for helmets, there's not really a whole lot of options for final helmets. I only gave Sean the King helmet because that has the same amount of defense as the Shining helmet, but they don't offer anything entirely new for him in general. But still, this is one of the two helmets will do nicely. But I went ahead and gave him the King helmet because this is like he's like the only party member who can equip this for some odd reason. Now for accessories, I would strongly recommend giving him Iron Bracelet to bolster his defense. This will give him a much better defense increase and make him a little bit more durable in combat. Thankfully, he gets very high HP by the time he hits level 50. So that's a pretty good accessory to have on him. Luckily, you can purchase those pretty easily from Hans' shop for the most part. If you're concerned about building up his weak offense, you can definitely give him the Hero Belt, which will bolster his offense by at least 10 points. Of course, if you want to protect him from status elements, you can also give him the Shining Bracelet. But that you can also get one during your descent during Infinity, or try to win one from Croakings on Giant Isle. But that thing also has a chance to drop in charms as well. But technically, Dream Bracelet and is also another good option if you want to protect Sean from spell damage for the most part. And that's pretty much it for the accessories. So anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this guide about our favorite Frog Prince, Sean. And even though he's kind of underwhelming, he's actually very useful against undead enemies once you figure out all of his weapons. Nearly almost all of his weapons deal holy base damage. So anyway, I'm going to take a small break, rehydrate my throat, and then we'll go over Nina's guide next. So... And we'll resume once we get to a more suitable location for her field ability to be used. So hang tight. I will return